Hello and welcome to an Infinity Games Considerations video. I'll no longer call them tactical considerations because I generally will not cover just tactics but other aspects of the game as well. So from now on they will be called Game Considerations videos. In this video I'll be looking at the difference between the N4 and N5 profiles. We will look at what changes have occurred and how this may inform you when deciding which trooper profile to take. Your choice in trooper profile affects how you play your faction or sectorial. So I will only look at the Nomad faction in N5 for this video, mainly because it is the army that I play and I did not have time to record the major factions in N4 or the trooper profiles before the N5 update. So by using Nomads as an example, we can see what changes have been made and extrapolate this towards other factions. However, not all factions and sectorials will be affected the same as Nomads. Corvus Belli will have made changes specifically for each faction and sectorial. Using this example does not mean that changes are uniform across all armies. So here is an N5 Nomad Trooper roster and allocation. It has removed a lot of bloat and has kept the essence of the Nomad faction since the N2 days. There are a few troopers that were predominant that have removed, which is some of the Mora profiles, but that's okay. I still think that the changes to the vanilla faction has captured the essence of Nomads with a few extra bits of flavor as well. So this video will basically be just a compare and contrast between N4 and N5 profiles. So I will have the N4 profiles up on the left of the screen and the N4 profiles up on the right. Now unfortunately the newer profiles, as highlighted, were not available in N4, so I will not be using them in this discussion. So feel free to pause the video and look at the differences yourselves. And just a caveat, the N5 profiles that I've screen captured was a week after the Army 7 update, so some profiles may have changed by the time you watch this video. I've already done a bit of a check and it looks like it's okay. However, I'll do my best to let you know if there are changes as we go through the recording. Okay, so firstly we'll look at the Alguaciles, or Alguacils, depending on where you come from. Now, for those who do not know, the Alguacil is the basic trooper profile that all other profiles are built from, because initially Infinity was a skirmisher game, but it's not what it was today. It was more like an RPG skirmisher game. And the Alguacil was the basic profile that was used to generate all the other profiles in the game. And I think it still is to some degree, but don't hold me to that. Okay, so basically as you can see, N4 on the left and N5 on the right. Not much has really changed in the way of attributes. They're still the same. However, they have Corvus Belli have removed the multi-sniper rifle and the combi rifle grenade launcher profiles. Now I'm not sure the reason for the changes, whether that's because in their data from all the tournament games not many people chose those profiles, or maybe they thought it was too overpowered during the fire teams, whether you'd have a 5-person pure core Alguaciles with the multi-sniper rifle up top and just picking off enemy pieces in arrow. So overall the points cost are the same. The lieutenant profile is now half an SWC instead of 1, which is slightly better than before, but it's still a punishment for using the Alguacil lieutenant. For the moderators, they pretty much have the same attributes as before, and again they lost the multi-sniper rifle and grenade launcher profiles, similar to Alguacils. The boarding shotgun profile now has an EM carbine for the same points cost previously in N4, and I think this is kind of interesting because generally across the board there's a reduction in the top end of profiles such as heavy infantry and tags, and I think Corvus Belli are trying to encourage more heavy infantry and tag lists, or at least the use of them. So the EM carbine profile may be useful when coming up against such opponent lists. Okay, Securitate has received similar changes. Attributes are the same across the board. Obviously, they too lost the multi-sniper rifle profile, and the combi rifle and repeater profile. But as you can see, they still keep the boarding shotgun repeater profile. Now the veteran skill has been renamed Warhorse, which most of us should be aware by now, and it pretty much works functionally the same as the veteran in N4. However, the only addition now is that they are not affected by enemy troopers that have the BS attack minus skill. And I've always been interested because Warhorse allows you to no longer be isolated. And I've always wondered how that works with the hacker, because that hacker can still function, because an enemy hacker cannot use Oblivion against you. Like, it doesn't work. You cannot be isolated, you cannot be in isolated state, and so you can still function normally as a hacker. So I've never used that before, but I've often thought about including it in the list. So if anyone has actually ever used the Securitate hacker, let me know how it went in your games in the comments below. I'd be quite interested to see how it goes. Okay, the Mars Spider. I've never used the Mars Spider before, although looking at the profiles for doing this video, it does look quite interesting on paper and in theory. I've never played it, so I'm not sure how it would go in any games. The only changes in N5 is that they now have the stealth skill, and this should be able to help them move into the midfield unmolested. A query I do have, and maybe someone can help answer this for me: does the stealth skill still apply when using long skills such as jump or climb? I mean, I know these guys have climbing plus, and I think from N4 in my previous games, I think if you had stealth and climbing plus, you could still climb and still have the stealth skill, not have anyone declare any AROs inside the zone of control. But if it was a trooper that did a long skill climb or jump, it didn't apply. So I couldn't find anything in N5 and whether that still applies or not. Someone let me know if that's still the case. Going off the rules as written, I'm assuming it wouldn't be. Stealth should apply because obviously, you know, the troopers trained to be quiet, so regardless of whatever long skill, they should still be stealthy, but I'm not sure if that's confirmed or not. Okay, so the attributes for the security rounders remain the same, along with the equipment and skills mostly. The boarding shotgun profile has a points reduction of 4 points, and the shock marksman rifle is now a multi-marksman rifle for the same SWC and points. The Red Fury profile has been reduced from 1.5 to 1 SWC, which is quite a good reduction, and the hacker profile is reduced by 1 point. And I have used this security rounder multi-marksman rifle in my first 300 point N5 game, and that actually worked out to be alright. The only thing it killed was a TR bot with a, what's that new one called? The Thunderbolt. So having the marksmanship skill definitely helped me with that, and that was up against Imperial Army. Is that the Yujing Heavy Infantry Army? I think it's Imperial Army. But yes, that's the only thing it killed, unfortunately. Didn't get to use it any more than that. But it did its job, and having the option to do AP, was it AP? Yes, because there's no shock, so it was AP. Not that it really mattered, but anyway, it did manage to take out the TR bot with Thunderbolt just outside of effective range for the multi-marksman rifle, and I was quite happy with that. And so for the Kulak payback unit, the attributes and skills remain the same. In N5, the second chain of command profile has been removed, and it's now just a plain combi rifle plus 1 burst and pulsar. The hacker profile with hacking device has been completely removed, and the killer hacking device has been given an upgrade with carbonite. And it has an armor-piercing submachine gun, cyber mines, and the new disco baller, which makes it quite interesting. It has the option of obviously killing enemy hackers, but has carbonite to place those heavy infantry and tags and remotes in immobilized B state. Quite an interesting profile. Haven't used it yet. You know, maybe in future games I'll probably look at using it. It's sort of a, you know, instead of having two profiles, one with a hacker device and killing hacker device, it sort of gives you the killer hacking device plus that one thing you need. And carbonite is primarily geared towards remotes, heavy infantry and tags, and once again I think Corvus Belli are trying to push for HI tag lists, and so having this profile for the Kulak pretty much covers exactly what you need. Killer hacking device to take out the enemy hackers, and the Carbonite to deal with any remotes, heavy infantry, and tags. And overall, a general points and support weapon cost reduction for all Kulak profiles. Hellcats, they see the addition of Super Jump Jet Propulsion. So Super Jump now allows you to perform the jump skill as a basic short skill, which means you can perform this twice now of 6 inches. So you can effectively move 12 inches in an order. And the jet propulsion just basically gives you the option of, instead of jumping in one straight linear direction, you can jump around corners, or you can jump up and come back depending on the line of fire that you want to use, which can be useful. Obviously the downside is you do not claim partial cover bonuses. However, it can be useful to hide behind a building somewhere, and if you could just jump up and to the right and you could see a small line of fire to a key target, you can do that, pop up, fire a Gobi rifle, and then pop back down again. So basically the attributes remain the same for the Hellcat. There's an obvious reduction to the number of profiles. There's only just 4 now, and it looks like there's been a merging of some profiles. And I think these were probably the 4 most common profiles to take. So the paramedic profile obviously was a specialist that you could land when you need it, or have it land in the midfield to revive a key trooper. It has now been given the deployable repeater profile, so it makes it more multi-use, which is good, and probably one of the more keen profiles to take. And the boarding shotgun now has just what's called the adhesive launcher rifle. I think it's still the same as before, haven't checked the attributes. And it also has decharges. So that's the Hellcat I'll be using for an upcoming tournament for Mind Wipe. So it has the decharges, and I can deploy it hopefully right next to a console. Support weapon cost remains the same, with just a general slight reduction of points across all profiles. Okay, the Grenzers, attributes remain the same, and obviously they never had veteran before, but now they've picked up the skill Warhorse, which will obviously make them quite more formidable in a loss of lieutenant and retreat situation. They can still function normally, and also that they are also not affected by the BS attack minus skill, normally -3. So it'd be interesting to see how these are played. You only get 1 availability in N5, however, so I'm not sure how that would work. The only removal of the profile was the plain multi-sniper rifle profile, and they've just kept the multi-sniper rifle marksmanship skill, which makes sense. That'd be the only one you take. Why would you take the plain one when you give yourself a few extra points? The benefit of removing the BS -3 for partial cover. The points have been decreased for the missile launcher, Red Fury, and multi-sniper rifle marksmanship. All other points remain the same previously. Intruders, their availability has been reduced to 1 in plain Nomads faction. All skills and equipment have remained the same. All the profiles have had a significant points reduction, and the killer hacking device profile has changed. It is now an armor-piercing submachine gun +1 burst, pulsar +1 burst, and grenades, and now it has the infiltration skill. So I'm not too sure what to make out of this trooper. It's coming across as some sort of more advanced skirmisher troop type, but you're paying a lot of points for it as well. The point cost is very similar to a Spectre, I'd say, but I'm not sure how you'd use this one effectively. Maybe it's a great counter camouflage skirmisher trooper. I'm not too sure what to make of it. There's better profiles for skirmishers, obviously, and for a lot cheaper. The Senator Observance pretty much remain the same. The profiles remain the same, with just a significant points reduction across the board. I have used the heavy machine gun in a game, and it works well with Neurosynetics. I do like Neurosynetics as a skill, but however, it's still easy to kill, and I think If I was to use it again in the future, I'd probably take the Mark 12. It has the Spitfire ranges with obviously just burst 3, and put it in a better position where it's a bit more protected from enemy arrow fire or enemy attacks, but at least overlooking a key fire lane to an objective, or overlooking an objective, and just be that full burst nuisance in arrow. Evaders practically remain the same, with only a points reduction for the boarding shotgun profiles, and all evader profiles are good. It just depends on the mission and how you want to play. Okay, the Memorable Guard have had a bit of rework in this edition of N5. They've had 1 point increase for their close combat attribute and a 1 point decrease for their physical attribute. Now, I'm not too sure with the physical attribute, but I think that's because when you put them in a Hz fire team, you do gain +1 dodge, so I'm thinking that's probably why there's a physical reduction in the attributes. It isn't applied to all profiles, it's just, so far I've noticed it's been applied to the Memorable Garda, and I think a few others, but we'll go, as we continue on, I'll let you know. So I think they make up for this in their level 3 fire teams, which will give them a +1 for dodge. They have acquired a 360-degree visor, which is interesting, and they have gained the jump 8 inches. So it's not super jump, it's just plain jump, but in N5 the jump skill is 6 inches for every trooper now. However, they have 8 inches, so they don't jump 6 inches, they can jump 8 inches, which was quite useful in one of my previous games. I've only played 2 games of N5 so far, and 8 inches is quite long enough to jump from rooftop to rooftop. You know, normally the gaps between buildings are 4 inches or greater, and there's one game I jumped from rooftop to rooftop to get a better line of fire on enemy trooper, and having that 8 inches definitely just help get on top of that other roof safely and not have to like perform an idle because the distance is too great. I'd say the available profiles have been trimmed and slimmed. So I think they've reduced the profiles and sort of slimmed them up and amalgamated some to make them more, the intent is to use them exactly as intended, which is basically just a plain heavy infantry, go in, shoot, attack things. So 4 profiles now have the Tinbot Firewall -6, and this is interesting because the Lieutenant profile has a Tinbot Firewall -6, and if you put them in a Harris team of say a missile launcher, lieutenant, and a hacker, or missile launcher, heavy machine gun, and lieutenant, they all get protected from any enemy hacking attacks, which is quite a useful profile now. There's been a general points decrease across all profiles, and now all profiles have the boarding pistol, and this is quite significant because with the changes to the shotguns, they no longer have blast mode, which uses a small teardrop template. It's just a hit mode. So now all the Memorable Guard profiles can use a small template when moving into the midfield, either when attacking or for arrow hits. Okay, for the Taskmasters, they lost the heavy shotgun profile in N5, and they gained a new skill called Fire Team Master for Morlocks. The Fire Team Master skill applies for the Morlocks and Zellenkriegers. So this skill allows for irregular troopers to belong in a fire team with the Taskmaster and become regular troopers instead, generating regular orders. Possibly looks like Corvus Belli want to fuel the Taskmaster with regular orders, or to make more use of the Taskmaster and the Morlocks, because in the fluff they do work together, so maybe that's why, make it a better reflection of the lore in the game. So one of the profiles has strategic deployment, which allows the trooper with a corresponding fire team to deploy forward of the deployment zone. So for that profile, the strategic deployment I think is the default 4 inches, unless there's a number allocated to it in brackets. So the Taskmaster can be deployed 4 inches forward of the deployment zone with a fire team of Morlocks. So itself and 2 Morlocks. Unfortunately, you can't do that in N5, but possibly in Lagunan. And in their attributes for the Taskmaster, they gain 1 point of CC and lost 1 point of Fizz, and again I think that's probably because of the fire team changes. The Cruiser Borak, well, some players should be happy now. They've gained BS attack -3 again, which replaces their mimetism -3. They did lose 1 point of Fizz, and they removed the Lieutenant profile with a Mark 12, and they've also had a significant points reduction, quite a noticeable significance. You know, if you look at the previous editions, they were in the range of 50, high 50s, now they're in the high 40s, mid to high 40s, so losing around about 10 points in cost, which is, like I said, quite a big change. And I think this is Corvus Belli pushing for more heavy infantry tag profile lists. So tags have changed this edition. Pilots for manned tags can no longer dismount and remount. Which me personally, I've never used a tag, but I always found it quite interesting to be able to push up with a tag, dismount, complete objective, and then remount and come back in again. I've always liked that mechanic, even though I never used it myself. However, now I'll never get a chance to use it because pilots will no longer dismount. So what they have now is a peripheral has been added to allow the pilot to interact with the objectives, and it's basically just a concept taken from the crab bot from Panoceana and just applied to all tags now across the entire game. So if you hear, the Gator has lost 2 points of Fizz, and the profiles have merged into one. The NCO skill is now standard because it sits in the attributes section. They lost immunity shock, but that's because immunity shock does not apply to troops with structure, it only applies to troops with vitality. So most things that used to have immunity shock with structure will now have that removed. And they also lost Natural Born Warrior. And obviously just some of the terms for the BC attack and CC attack have changed to suit the changes in N5. So the BC attack +1 damage in N4 is now BC attack saving roll -1. It's the same concept, nothing has changed, just obviously due to the changes in damage mechanics, they've changed just to update the special skills to be relevant. So now it's not +1 damage, it's saving roll -1. And they now cost 1.5 SWC and 74 points. They just let me check army because they gain NCO and still have tactical awareness. Not sure if that's an old update. No, okay, so they're still the same. So yeah, in the current Infinity Army, they still have, or they've gained NCO now and still keep tactical awareness. So obviously more orders can now be attached to the Gator to move them around the battlefield. So again, I think this is more evidence that Corvus Belli are pushing for more HI tag lists. Because not only does a tag have its own regular order, plus its tactical awareness order, you can now use the Lieutenant's order. So that's 3 orders for a trooper, which is quite a powerful game mechanic when you think about it. For the Salamandra Squadron, some interesting changes. The usual 1 point decrease for Fizz. Interestingly, they are no longer shock immune, but as I said, that's because shock immunity only applies to vitality troopers, not structure troopers. They also no longer have technical awareness, but they do pick up NCO skill as a replacement. And then just the skills reflecting the current changes to the damage structure. And a reasonable points reduction. They were 72 points in N4, they are now 68 points in N5. So a lot cheaper. Okay, geckos have the same attributes as N4. In N5, they gain BS attack at +1. And both profiles now cost 1 support weapon cost. and a slight points reduction. Okay, for the skirmishers we have zeros, and they have mostly remained the same, only a points reduction on the boarding shotgun profiles in N5, and that's because they've lost their template weapon. The zero mine layer has a boarding shotgun now instead of a combi rifle. The Morans have remained the same, with only a points reduction for the boarding shotgun profiles. And interestingly, they've only have one availability in just the Nomads faction. I think there's still availability 2 in Corregidor. And I think this is because a lot of people complained about having 2 Morans prone, sitting on a roof, extending a repeater network, and just dropping crazy collars. So I think this was a change to help balance the game out, because in N4 certain mechanics were often played because they were either favourable or because more and more people just talked about it more often, and that just became the thing to do. So if you're a beginner player and you hear on Discord or Facebook or the community Corvus Belli community profile community board, everyone talking about the dreaded fear of 2 Morans on a rooftop, well, you know, as a new player, I think, well, if people fear that, I'm going to do that as well. So I think to help break that stalemate, they've just made it availability 1 in the faction, just so people are not becoming too dependent or reliant on a certain gameplay, because that was also set up to provide the guided missile attacks more often. And so I think Corvus Belli have just really tried to change the way things are done, so we're not getting all stagnated and fixated in certain gameplays, because that was considered by the community the best way of doing something. Spectres, also again availability 1. They're pretty much the same for the attributes, a small points reduction in some profiles, and have gained 1 more profile, and that profile in N5 is the mine layer profile with EM mines and shock mines. So that'd be quite an interesting profile, because depending on your opponent's list, if they're high on light infantry, single wound or single vitality models, you probably want to lay a shock mine out. But if they have tags and heavy infantry dominant lists, then you might want to place out an EM mine instead, because EM mines will place remote infantries and tags in immobilized B state and isolated state. The Hecklers have had a points increase for their CC attribute, up from 13 to 15, which is interesting. And they gained terrain 0G, which, like most terrain skills, they're not really relevant in tournament games, but in casual games you may want to play on certain battlefields with certain terrain effects. And noticeably for the faction, they've lost the jammer and fast panda profile. That one is only available in Tunguska, so they no longer have that, because that was, again, was a dominant trooper. He's in camouflage state. You got one user, just run it up in your enemy deployment zone, release a fast panda, isolate the lieutenant, or possibly even a tag. So that, you know, that became a more dominant play towards the end of N4, and so they've removed that to again remove us as players stagnating in a certain way of doing things, especially in Nomads. And the killer hacking device costs 1 more point in N5 too, which I'm not sure why. I don't really use Hecklers that much. I think most people just use the jammer and fast panda profile. Okay, Tunguska Interventors, completely the same in N5, just a slight points decrease in all profiles. Puppet Masters, same attributes in N5, just 1 point decrease across all profiles, and the mine layer profile no longer costs any support weapon cost. And the puppet bots remain the same, only the boarding shotgun profile has reduced in points. And the tactic with Puppet Masters is generally the same. So for the Dimorlock group, there's only been a slight change. They now have the no cover skill, which is a nested skill separated out of the impetuous skill. And it basically means that the trooper does not receive any partial cover mods, so no negative modifier to BS attacks towards it, and doesn't get the +3 to armor. The boarding shotgun profile has been reduced in cost. That's because they've lost their template. option. And pistols in N5 can no longer be used in combat anymore. The CC mechanic changed slightly, and Corvus Belli want to keep the close combat weapons for close combat attacks only. However, that means there's been certain pistols generated throughout N5, and a lot of the times the pistols were a lot better in close combat in N4 than using the Trooper's Fizz for CC attacks. So now, if you want to use a pistol in N5, you have to use the Cobra pistol because it's the only pistol that can be allowed to be used in close combat attacks. The Kunin Oberfall Commando, her attributes remain the same. They do lose the martial arts level 2 skill, and I think that is because in N4 this trooper profile was quite, some would say, busted or broken. High damage output, very hard to stop, and it was just too strong. So I think they've tried to reduce it, make it a lot more balanced in the game. And yeah, a lot of the players complained that the Chimera and Pupniks were too powerful in the game. Immunity total is now replaced with immunity enhanced, and that just means it has both immunity arm and BTS. And there's a slight change to the rules because immunity does not work against non-lethal weapons or comms attacks, except for if you have immunity state, such as immunity state isolated, then obviously it does work, but generally immunity does not work against non-lethal attacks. So you can always stun the Chimera now, which is good. Put a flash pulse up, or a forward observer, bot or trooper, and flash pulse the Chimera and hopefully get off a stunned, and that will stop them in their tracks and make them less dangerous, just having all the orders fueled into them to come down and do some damage into your deployment zone. And it gives the players a chance to slow down the advance of the Chimera and the Pupniks. And one noticeable difference is there's no options for either standalone or various forms of Pupniks. It's now just you pay for only the Chimera and 3 Pupniks. There's no options. So interesting to see how that will play out in N5. I've never used it, not interested in using it. I'm sure others will, and they'll probably have their thoughts and opinions on how it works now. And I dare say it's probably a lot more balanced. Okay, onto the remotes. For the Vostok, attributes remain the same. However, in N5 there are now 2 profiles and not the one. One profile keeps this repeater and has a more dangerous Mark 12. The other one is just a fireteam option, which is just a standard Vostok with no repeater and a standard Mark 12. And they cost less now than they did in N4. The Cyclone Sputnik pretty much just stayed the same. Again, no longer shock immune because shock ammunition does not work against structure troopers. And just general points reduction, quite a significant points reduction actually, and we'll see how that works in the game. I do plan on using the Cyclone because of the Pitcher and Spitfire, but I'll let you know how that goes in my tournament coming up. Lukanod Sputnik has had an interesting change. It is now movement 8-2 in N5, and it has lost the deactivated piece of equipment but gains forward deployment plus 4 inches. And the second profile has replaced the Acrolat Cannon with the Thunderbolt, and both profiles pick up the emitter. Now I think the intent is to make this a much more, I don't think it was used that much in N4. Hopefully in N5 it will be. I've used it once and it's quite good. That mobility 8 is very handy, and that forward deployment plus 4, you can really push into the midfield, have a repeater in the midfield, lay out your crazy koalas, and to be just a basic nuisance or obstacle to your opponent. And I used it in my 300 point game, and that emitter was actually quite good. It ended up isolating and immobilizing the Imperial armies, that really heavy infantry that is like a fire support unit, had a Neurosynetics missile launcher plus 1 burst. I can't remember the name of it, sorry. But I couldn't shoot it out. Because it has immunity armor, so everything, even from my missile launchers, it just became normal ammunition. But firing the emitter from the Lucanod, pretty much just locked it up in one shot, in one order, immobilized B and isolated. And I was like, oh, I should have done that before. We shouldn't have wasted 3 orders doing coordinated orders with different multiple troopers. But anyway, live and learn. But it definitely became a good solid obstacle, and that heavy flamethrower, which uses the large teardrop template, definitely allowed me to reduce his 5 trooper heavy infantry fire team. It wasn't a pure one, thank goodness, but it was a mixed. It was a multi-tool fire team, but having that large template just really made it very useful in the midfield, taking those hits. The Stempler Zons, the aka FO bots, remain the same. However, there are 2 profiles now in N5. The second profile has tactical awareness, and I think this is just a rule that everyone liked from an RTS season. I think it was season 14 that gave them tactical awareness, and so I think you'll probably see the tactical awareness one being used more often for completing objectives. Reaction Zons, aka TR bots, total reaction bots, remain the same. However, they've gained a second profile with a Thunderbolt +1 burst. Thunderbolt is pretty much the same as a Fuhrerbach Rangers, but instead of APDA ammunition or explosive, it's just normal ammunition. It's quite cheaper than heavy machine gun, so I think people with the points remaining will probably take the Thunderbolt over the heavy machine gun. Vertigo Zons, also known as missile bots, they remain the same. The BS guided rules have changed slightly, but otherwise the intent of the mechanic is the same. Transductor Zons, also known as flash bots or flash pulse bots, remain the same, and the same with the Zon bots. Salient Zons, also known as baggage bots, the attributes remain the same, and the skills. There is a slight decrease of the Evo Hacker and Total Reaction profile. What is interesting is the change to the baggage skill, which will make the consideration of these bots probably more enticing for people in their armies, because the baggage skill now allows for the automatic reloading of disposable weapons of troopers, such as mines, pitchers, Flammen Spears, not Fuhrerbachs, Panzerfausts, because they're all limited, so you can come back, move within 8 inches or within zone of control of the remote, and then in the states phase at the end of your turn, automatically reload and push back out and expend those weapons again, which is quite an interesting mechanic change. I don't think it was used that often, so I think they're trying to make it more user-friendly and encouraging the use of these troopers or profiles, and also probably for the sale of them as well, to be honest. Evo hacking has also changed slightly, so there's some changes to the supportware for remotes. So assisted fire and enhanced reaction in N5 now require the remotes to be inside the baggage bot's zone of control to activate. Before, in N4, it could just be activated across the board, whereas now to activate it you have to be within zone of control first, and then once the program is activated then you can move out and the program will remain attached to that remote. Obviously it has negative feedback, so if you were to change and use a different supportware program, then it will remove that one. And I think this sort of helps balance out the game a bit too. I think some people may have played the Evo Hacker with a couple of assault remotes in Nomads, and you have like maybe 2 Cyclones or whatever, a Cyclone and a Vostok, and because they're spread across the deployment zone on either side, give them marksmanship, bam, push forward, assault. Whereas now it's like, okay, you have to be within zone of control first, put the upgrade on them, and then move them out. So it's probably helped just ease back a bit of the imbalance, especially probably for the Vostok. I think it's probably the common one for that tactic. And yeah, that's pretty much it for that. Clockmakers. Clockmakers, which are the basic engineer profile for Nomads, and basically across all factions and sectorials the basic engineer profile has changed, and I think this is to get more use out of the engineers. They all have more than one profile now, so there's the original basic engineer, and now there's an engineer with deployable cover and an armed turret option. And I think this was done to push us gamers into purchasing more engineers, to be honest, because they're better engineers to take, such as evaders. So now that they have these other profiles, it makes it more interesting, and some people have been spamming them, well not spamming them, but have really tried to play with the armed turrets and the baggage bots. And just, you know, I think you have 2 armed turrets, I think, or 1, I can't remember. And then you just pop out an armed turret, automatically reload, pop out another armed turret, automatically reload, pop out another turret, and have a really good defensive setup for your DZ. Sorry, for your deployment zone. So that's sort of been the main thing that's happening recently with players. Some people have said it's broken, but you know, the armed turret here for the Clockmaker is a combi rifle. Like, it's not broken. You can just shoot a long range weapon and you'll be fine, or be in impersonation state or camo state and walk past it. Like, there are ways around it. You can still do the smoke throwing technique, but it's not like they're broken. It's just a bigger hindrance to the game. Nothing has changed for Dactarians and Walkers. And Jazz and Billy, nothing has changed. Just a slight change and rewording for the rules to fit N5. That's about it. Mary Problems has had a slight change. Her BS attribute now is 12 N5, and she costs 1 point less. And she's also the other source of pictures in Nomads. However, she is one of those multi-use troopers too, you know, with the hacking device and the killer hacking device with the various upgrades to make them even stronger. But she's still not a trooper that you'd go out and fight with. It's more combat hacking, I guess. Like, you know how most people have a active turn shooter, or Mary will be an active turn hacker. And so she's still the same, but obviously with that BS change to 12, a little bit more able to be reliable in placing pitches in the midfield. Zoe and Firewall, attributes remain the same. Zoe does have a slight points change for her 3 profiles in N5. And her bioimmunity is now just immunity BTS. But overall, she has increased in points by 1 point. I think. Let me just check. Yeah. Zoe herself has increased in points, but when you choose to have Zoe and Firewall, a decrease in one option and an increase in the other. So, not really anything significant there to write home about. Slight change for Fiddler in N5. She now has structure instead of vitality, and her profiles have increased by 1 point each, and the jackpots remain the same. Well, the Vulcan shotgun, not too sure. I think someone was reporting that they no longer have the template mode as well, so it's just a hit mode. So probably not as strong as what they were in N4, but definitely more balanced in N5. Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, Wolf, has had some minor changes. His movement is now 6-2 in N5, and he gains BS attack, continuous damage, and gains immunity armor. So that's quite an interesting change. I've never used him, so I can't really comment on how he's used. A lot of people use him as just this send forward and just kill everything. Their main attack piece. But that will probably be reduced slightly because there's been changes to the Berserk rule. Now Berserk was before you'd move up the full movement and then a free or a normal roll CC attack. Now it's a face-to-face roll. So it's less threatening in CC, but has probably become a bit more balanced in that regards, and is just as threatening in BS attacks. And he costs 1 point less in N5. Perseus has had a few skills added to his attributes. He gains BS attack +1 burst and super jump. Both profiles cost the same. The only difference between them is the weapon loadout. One has a multi-rifle, the other has a breaker combi rifle. And the points is slightly more expensive in N5. And never used Perseus before, but I've planned it'd be interesting to use him at some stage. He seems to be a more competent warband, capable of moving forward quite quickly with his super jump. So 12 inches, 6-inch jump for super jump. That's a basic skill, so you can do jump twice now, which is 12 inches, not 4. Still good high fizz to get those smoke grenades down. Obviously the frenzy is still the thing that will make him less useful, but it's pretty much send him up aboard as effectively as you can. Once he gets a kill, then you worry about the change to frenzy with that. And Mimetism -6 is quite good as well. So interesting to see how he plays. I think he's a bit more aggressive and a bit more competent this game, this edition. But like I said, I've never played with him before, so I can't really comment. But I've always planned to include him, but he is quite expensive. 34 points for a medium infantry warband basically is it's hard to justify sometimes, especially when the Nomad faction is limited for points and support weapon costs. Okay, so here's a brief look at the fire teams for the Nomads factions. We can only have now one Harris fire team and 2 pairs of duos. The top chart is for duos only, and the bottom chart allows for a Harris and a duo combo. And make of it what you will. I think there's a bit of a push to have, like I said, it's more of a push to have heavy infantry and tags nowadays, because obviously the Gecko has 2, the Mobile Regatta has 2. Yes, the other tags and heavy infantry are 1, but that's because they're only availability 1 anyway. But I think it's more for an armoured fire teams or armoured teams army list with support. Plenty of good options there. I won't go on too much because another channel, Infinity channel, I think Infinity, the Dante, he did a good breakdown of Nomads and the fire team breakdown, which has given me some ideas. However, that's the options that we have. So really, to get the BS attack special dice, you need to have the same. So your Morlocks, Geckos, Mobile Regattas, Kulaks and Securitates and fire teams 1 will get the +1 special dice, and your Kulaks and Mobile Regatta again in the fire teams 2 will be the only ones that gain the +1 special dice. So you could have 2 lots of Mobile Regatta duos, or 1 Harris Mobile Regatta, 1 duo Mobile Regatta, or two Geckos as a duo, or 2 Morlocks as a duo. Just fill it out with whatever you need to complete the mission. So here's a bit of a meme list just to emphasize the duo options and the fire team options now. I have a Harris fire team, Mobile Regatta, the Lieutenant with a 10-bot firewall -6 to give them that hacking defense, and 2 missile launchers. Possibly have 1 up on the rooftop overlooking most of the battlefield, and maybe 1 in a fire lane. They get that +1 special dice, and if someone wants to shoot back at them, they get that +1 dodge for ARO, so that makes them very useful. Another duo of Mobile Regatta heavy machine gun and a hacker, and that's your midfield attack piece with a specialist up front or behind it, moving into the midfield. Just because I could. A Granzer and Rounder both have MSV1, both your skirmish anti-camo fire team duo, pushing up, dealing with those kind of problems. Light flamethrower for those templates, and the Rounder with a hacking device to allow any hacking of heavy infantry, and the Trinity just to deal with any enemy hackers. Lucanod, because I've used it and I liked it, push it forward, or deploys 4 inches in deployment zone and 8 inches gets straight into the midfield. So if you have a good straight line, 8 + 4 is 12. The midfield is 2 feet in depth. You pretty much that Lucanod can get straight up on the middle line, the center line, in 1 order, or 1 move, sorry, which is half an order, and then you can drop out a Crazy Koala. You have a repeater on covering an objective, and you have a template weapon such as heavy flamethrower. And if there's any heavy infantry or tags, and you've got the emitter to deal with it. So yes, I definitely like the look on it. I'll be using it more often in my games. Obviously I can't have two because I need to have a mix of other things, but if I could have two, I'd definitely take them. And you've had an engineer, because you always need an engineer, and they're pretty much a good engineer. Multi-rifle deals with all sorts of troopers coming your way. Panzerfaust deals with the heavy stuff, and the Moran, again, just a basic combi rifle repeater. Put him in suppression fire if you need to with a combi rifle. Otherwise, hide him up in the rooftop prone. There's another repeater coverage there, and you've got crazy koalas to deploy in the midfield just to be in a nuisance. As you see, I'm 3 points shy of 300, but this is a 10 order list, and with the changes to the command tokens, if you choose to go first, your opponent has the option of removing 2 orders. Now, because you generate less than 10 orders, your opponent cannot do that. So here you get to have the full 10 orders going first, and your opponent will have to do something else, either declare speedball or place a trooper on suppressor fire. So yeah, like I said, it's only a meme list. I wouldn't really use it in a tournament style, but you can see there's a push to try and have more heavy infantry dominating lists with 10 orders. So something I'd probably try out one day, just for the fun of it, just testing ideas, especially the rounder hacker. I would prefer the rounder multi-marksman rifle, but anyway, it's just an example to elaborate the fire team changes and what you can build with a fire team change. So that's the end of that. There are plenty of channels with useful advice and opinions about how to play Infinity. At the end of the day, you decide what trooper profiles you like. All that is required is for playtesting against different opponents and their armies to see how your list holds up. And casual games are a good way to test out different list combinations and to see what trooper profiles work for you and your playstyle. Obviously, when it comes to ITS missions, you do need to build your list for the mission or groups of missions and tournaments, and you'll have to include certain troopers to deal with expected game mechanics such as tags, heavy infantry dominated lists, camouflage, marmotism, spam, etc. This is the end of the video. Due to a change in circumstances, videos will be a lot less frequent. I have a tournament coming up in February. It is CanCon 25 for Western Australia, and I will try and provide a battle report of a summary of how I went. I will be playing Nomads faction, and the mission lineup is Frostbite, Highly Classified, and Mindwipe. So once I've done that, I will let you know how we go. Okay, thank you for watching. May you have a good day.